I never believed in ghosts, not really. Not even after 20 years in this hospital. You hear stories, of course, patients claiming to see dead relatives, strange noises during the night shift, but you chalk it up to meds, stress, sleep deprivation. It was easier that way, safer. But after what happened in the North Wing last winter, I don't sleep through the night anymore. I leave the bathroom light on, and sometimes, when the wind howls just right, I swear I hear her breathing again. The North Wing isn't used anymore. It hasn't been for about 9 months. Technically, it's still operational, but none of us will go in there unless we're ordered to, and even then, never alone. We make excuses: short staffing, broken equipment, emergency cases. The administration pretends it's just an old, drafty section of the building. They don't ask why nurses quit mid-shift, or why patients are assigned to rooms. Near it start screaming about someone crawling on the ceiling. They don't want to know. And honestly, neither did I until the night they made me cover a double dot. It was snowing, the kind of snow that absorbs all sound, makes everything outside feel a little too still. My shift was supposed to end at midnight, but the nurse on the next rotation called out. They were desperate. I agreed to stay. I wish I hadn't. Around 2:30 a.m., I was making rounds, just routine checks, charts, vitals, comfort measures. I was tired, but nothing unusual. Then, while passing the nurse's station, I noticed the light on the panel blink once. One long flash. Room 413. That didn't make sense. Room 413 was in the North Wing. It had been sealed for months after the incident with the psych patient's error, something. A 23-year-old who'd been transferred after a failed suicide attempt. She'd been quiet for days, barely spoke, ate very little. Then, one morning, she tore her four out, broke a plastic fork, and carved something into her chest before collapsing. The code team couldn't save her. The worst part was what she cut. At least, what the rumor said. The security footage was lost, and the nurse on duty had transferred out the next day, but word spread fast. She carved the word, listen, not help, not stop, just listen. I stood there watching. The light blink again. 413, steady, like someone had pressed the call button and was still holding it down. I tried to tell myself it was a system glitch. Happens all the time. But something made me walk to the old hallway. I don't know why. Maybe it was morbid curiosity. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that there was nothing there. That it was just stories. Just cold drafts and imagination. The door to the North Wing creaked open with a sound that didn't seem like it should come from a metal hinge, wet, like something tearing. Inside, the lights flickered once and steadied. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. The hum of machines, the distant beeping of monitors, the occasional cough or shuffle from a patient down another hallway gone. The silence here was absolute. Swallowing, I walked slowly, each footstep echoing. The air was colder, heavier. I passed room 409, then 411. When I reached 413, the door was slightly ajar. No call light, no sound, just the faint smell of antiseptic and something else sweet, almost syrupy, but rotten underneath. Like fruit left in a sealed container too long. I pushed the door open. The room was dark, but I could make out the bed against the far wall. Empty linens neatly folded. No signs of life. And then I saw her. Just a flash dot in the corner near the ceiling, where the walls met. A shape moved. Fast. Like a spider scuttling into shadow. I froze. Every hair on my body stood on end. I fumbled for the light switch. It clicked. Nothing happened. I turned to leave and the door slammed shut behind me. I jumped back and grabbed the handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was like someone had locked it from the outside, or maybe the inside. I banged on the door. Hello? Anyone out there? No answer. The temperature dropped fast. My breath began to fog in front of me. And then the whispering started. First incoherent, like someone was muttering just behind my ear. But when I turned, there was no one. Then, clearer. Listen, listen. I backed into the corner, my heart hammering. The walls themselves felt like they were closing in. And just when I thought I'd scream, the light flickered on. Room 413 looked normal. Empty bed, chair in the corner, EKG, machine unplugged. Door creaked open behind me. I didn't wait. I ran, down the hall, through the metal door, back into the main wing. I didn't stop until I was at the nurse's station, panting, flushed with cold sweat. No one else had noticed anything. No call lights, no power flickers, nothing. But when I sat down to catch my breath, the computer screen lit up on its own. A new note had been added to the digital chart system under Sarah's old patient file. TIMESTAMP 2:43 AM written under Her name, in the notes section, were just 3 words. You heard me. I stared at those 3 words. My fingers trembled on the keyboard. There was no one logged into the system. It would have required a username and password 2-step verification. Nurses can't even request Tylenol without signing in, but there it was. You heard me. I shut off the monitor and walked away. My brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe it was a system error, a sick prank. Maybe I was just exhausted. I tried to focus on the rest of my shift, but every sound, every flicker of light, set my nerves on edge. The silence in the corridors wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, watching. The rest of the shift passed without another incident, but I couldn't shake it. The shape on the ceiling, the whisper, the message. By the time 7 a.m. rolled around, I didn't even say goodbye to anyone. I just grabbed my things and left. I didn't plan on telling anyone. I didn't want to be that nurse. The one people whispered about behind her back. But curiosity, it gets to you, and fear. Fear festers. The next night I came in early and pulled up Sarah's file again. The chart had been archived, locked, no access. I asked IT about it casually, pretending I needed it for a case study. They told me the file was corrupted, no backups. When I asked if there had been any unusual login activity, the guy just gave me this look and said, "Don't go looking for stuff the hospital doesn't want found." Later that week, I found Megan, the nurse who was on duty the night Sarah died. She was working at a private clinic now, completely different sector. When I mentioned Sarah's name, her face drained of color. "You saw something, didn't you?" she asked. I didn't even have to answer. She nodded slowly and said, "We all did. That's why I left. I still see her, sometimes, not like a ghost, more like an echo. She's in the corners, in the spaces between beeps. She's not done." Megan told me Sarah wasn't hallucinating in the days before her death. She'd written notes, pages of them. Most were taken by the psych team, but Megan had kept one. She handed me a folded yellowed page from her purse. It said, "The silence listens. Don't let it in." I left that conversation shaken but more obsessed than ever. What if she hadn't been crazy? What if she'd seen something no one else could? What if she was trying to warn us? That night I volunteered to restock supplies closers. Storage room was down the hall from the north wing. I told myself I wasn't going near 413 again, just close enough to prove it wasn't real, that nothing was going on. When I got to the hallway, it was quiet, too quiet. Again I took a breath, checked the time, 2:36 a.m. I opened the storage room door and started loading saline bags onto a cart. Then I heard it, a voice, from down the hall. A woman, whispering, "Still here." I froze. Every cell in my body screamed to run, but I forced myself to step out and look. The lights at the end of the hallway began to flicker, and one by one, they shut off. Like something was moving toward me, eating the light as it came. I turned and slammed the storage room door shut, locking it. Inside the darkness, I could hear her moving outside the door. Not footsteps, scraping like fingernails dragging across metal. I backed against the far wall, heart racing, trying not to breathe. Then something slammed against the door, hard, once, twice. A voice on the other side whispered, "You're listening now." Then silence. When I opened the door, a full 5 minutes later, the hallway was normal. Lights on, quiet, but someone had written across the floor in something dark and wet, "Let me in." Security reviewed the cameras. Nothing. The footage cut out for 6 minutes. Just black static. I put in for leave that night. I couldn't keep doing it. Couldn't keep walking those halls knowing something was lurking just beyond what the eye could see. But before I left, I had to see room 413 one more time. It was morning now. Daylight poured through the windows. The room looked harmless, ordinary, as if everything that happened was just a dream. But in the corner near the ceiling, I saw a mark, faint, but real, scratched into the plaster. I was here first. I told the new charge nurse, told her everything. She didn't laugh, didn't scoff. She just nodded slowly and said, "You lasted longer than most." I asked her what she meant. She said, "This place, it's older than the walls, older than the patients. Every few years someone breaks the silence, and every time, it wakes up, but it never wants to leave. It just waits." I left that day and never looked back. But sometimes, I hear it when I'm home, when the house is quiet. When the fridge hums just right and the streetlight outside flickers. It's never loud, never clear. Just a breath, a whisper. Listen. And when I close my eyes, I see the ceiling of room 413, and I know she's still there. I don't believe in ghosts, not really, but I believe in the things that linger. The things that hide between seconds, slip behind shadows, and sit just out of sight. In hospitals, you learn quickly. Death doesn't always leave quietly. Happened 6 years ago, and to this day I've never told anyone, not because I was afraid they wouldn't believe me. I was afraid they would bet that they'd understand it wasn't just a bad dream or some stress-induced hallucination, that what I saw was real, that it's still there. I was working the night shift in the East Wing of St. Helene's Medical Center, an older part of the hospital they used mostly for overflow now. The main tower was renovated and shiny, filled with new tech and bright lights. East Wing, no, it was like walking back in time. Yellowed tiles, humming fluorescents that always seemed to flicker at the wrong moment, and rooms that hadn't seen sunlight in years. They kept patients there when the rest of the hospital was full, usually elderly. Long-term cases, the kind of patients who didn't ask questions anymore. That week was busy. Some viral outbreak had filled the main wards. The East Wing was full, 12 patients. I had 6 on my board. One of them was a woman named Irene Whitaker, 78 years old. Chronic heart failure, dementia, nonverbal. She barely moved, just stared at the ceiling most days, eyes wide, unblinking. But she wasn't comatose. Her vitals were stable. She blinked, swallowed, sometimes even followed you with her eyes, and she never slept. Every night I'd pass her room, and she'd be there awake, staring at the ceiling as if it was whispering secrets only she could hear. I used to joke with one of the aides, "Ms. Whitaker's afraid to blink. Maybe she's waiting for something." That night it was just after 2:30 a.m. I was checking vitals when I passed her room again. Her monitor was quiet. Oxygen, steady, heart rate normal, but something was off. She wasn't looking at the ceiling anymore. She was staring right at me. It wasn't like the usual vacant gaze. Her eyes were wide, alert, locked on mine like she was begging me to see something. Her lips were moving, barely just the faintest twitch. I stepped inside. "Ms. Whitaker, are you okay?" She blinked slowly, then looked past me, behind me, over my shoulder. I turned around. Nothing, just the doorway, the empty hallway outside. When I turned back, she had covered her mouth with both hands, trembling. I swear she was trying to scream, but no sound came out. Just her eyes, wide, terrified. I pressed the call button for assistance, thinking maybe she was in distress. Maybe she was trying to speak and couldn't. The CNA came in, took one look, and froze. She's trying to say something. I leaned close. "Ms. Whitaker, what is it?" Her fingers unclasped from her mouth, and for the first time in 3 years, confirmed in her chart, she spoke. One word, whispered through cracked lips. "He's watching." The monitor flatlined. We tried CPR, called the code, worked her for 10 minutes, but she was gone. And just like that, silence. After the code team cleared, I sat alone in the break room, numb. A voice broke through a silence that had felt too thick like fog. The CNA, Rachel, stood by the door. "She said the same thing last year," she whispered. "Another patient, same room. She said he's watching," right before she died. I laughed, a sharp, nervous kind of laugh. "You're messing with me." Rachel shook her head. "I swear." Her name was Elsie. "Look it up." I did. Same room, room 208. Same time, 2:37 a.m. Same last words. That should have been the end of it. Just an odd coincidence. An eerie story to tell on stormy nights. But 2 days later, it happened again. Room 208 had been scrubbed and reassigned. We needed the bed. A man named Victor Torres was transferred in late 60s, recovering from surgery, healthy otherwise. At 2:36 a.m., his call light went off. When I entered, he was sitting upright in bed, staring at the ceiling. "Something's in the vent," he whispered. I looked up. The air vent was open slightly, but nothing out of the ordinary. "I heard breathing," he said. A voice. It said my name. I checked the room. Monitors were normal, but the air felt wrong, heavier, colder. "I think someone's watching me," he muttered, still looking at the vent. "He doesn't like me in here." I stayed with him for 20 minutes. Nothing else happened. I chalked it up to anesthesia side effects and anxiety. But at 4:05 a.m., I got the crash call. "Room 208, Victor. Cardiac arrest. We lost him." The doctor listed the cause of death as post-op complications, but I knew, Rachel knew. We didn't say it out loud, but we knew something was wrong with that room. After Victor died, I couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop thinking about that vent, the whispers, the eyes I never saw but felt. I started researching hospital records, old files, anything I could find on room 208. The deeper I looked, the darker it got. 10 years ago, a patient hung himself in that room. He'd been committed for psychiatric evaluation. A former hospital janitor named Alan Greaves. Middle of the night he looped an IV cord through the vent grate and swung himself. They didn't find him for hours. His final note was never released publicly, but one nurse posted about it in an old forum. She'd transcribed part of it before administration confiscated everything. It read, "They crawl through the walls. The ones who watch, the ones who whisper. If I close my eyes, they get closer. I can hear them breathing, watching, always watching. Same words, same theme, same room." I brought all this to the nurse manager. She told me to drop it, that I was letting grief and coincidence cloud my judgment, that I was scaring staff. I told her I wanted to be reassigned off East Wing. She said no. The next week, another patient moved into 208. This time I decided I wouldn't look away. I wanted to know what was happening. His name was Harold Clay, 74. Mild stroke, stable, no signs of dementia, hallucinations, or any other neurological issues. He had a dry sense of humor and always asked for extra jello. A harmless old man. They put him in room 208. I didn't tell him anything. What could I say? Hey, people tend to die mysteriously in this room around 2:30 a.m. and whisper about something watching them from the vent. No. All I could do was keep my rounds tight, my eyes open, and hope I was wrong. That night, I brought Harold his evening meds, and he joked about how cold the room felt. "You guys trying to freeze me to death. I can see my breath in here." He wasn't wrong, it was cold. The thermostat was set to 74, but the air coming out of the vent had a chill to it. I put in a maintenance request, but knew it wouldn't get answered until morning. At midnight, I checked in again. He was asleep, peaceful. At 2:20 a.m. I felt it, that weight, like someone had draped a wet blanket across the ward. The hallway, lights dimmed slightly. The buzzing of the fluorescents turned sharper, like they were trying to whisper through static. I stood outside room Story 2, no sounds. No light from under the door, and then click, his call light turned on. I stepped inside. Harold was sitting upright in bed, wide awake, staring at the vent. I didn't say anything at first. I just listened, and that's when I heard it, a low scraping noise, like something crawling through metal, followed by breathing, slow, raspy, unnatural breathing, coming from the vent. Harold didn't look at me. He just said, "He's mad, I'm in here." I asked, "Who's mad, Mr. Clay?" He turned to me then, and I'll never forget his face, this hollow, terrified look. His lips were trembling. His hands shook. He was here before. Before it was a hospital. They built it on top of him. And now he watches from the cracks. I stepped closer. "How do you know that?" "I can hear him," Harold whispered. "He talks to me. Said if I close my eyes, I'll never open them again." I glanced at the vent. There were fingers, not a whole hand. Just the suggestion of fingers, pale thin, like someone was bracing themselves inside the duct, peeking through. I blinked and they were gone. Harold grabbed my wrist. "You see him too, don't you?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell him he was confused, but I couldn't speak, because I did see it, and I still can't explain how. His monitor beeped wildly. His heart rate spiked, then dropped. Code. By the time help arrived, he was flatlining. I stood back as the team tried to revive him. Rachel stood beside me, trembling. "He's watching us now," she whispered. "Not just the patients." Harold was pronounced dead at 2:39 a.m. 3 patients, one room, all between 2:30 and 2:40. All spoke of the same thing. All stared at the same vent. I begged the nurse manager again to shut down the room. She said it was nonsense, so I took matters into my own hands. I stayed after my shift, past sunrise, and went to the records office, digged through the original blueprints of the East Wing. Room 208 didn't exist. I don't mean it had a different number. I mean the room wasn't on the plans. According to every floor map, there was supposed to be a janitor's closet between 207 and 209. No patient room, no vent, no wiring. I photocopied everything and brought it to maintenance. The guy looked at it, scratched his head, and said, "That's weird. I was always told the East Wing was added after the fire." "Fire?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, in the 60s, they never talked about it much. But my uncle worked here, said a whole section burned down. A basement wing maybe. Patients and staff trapped. Lot of people died. They bricked over the lower level. Pretended it never happened." My stomach dropped. I went back to room 208. It was empty now, scheduled for deep cleaning. I shouldn't have gone in. I shouldn't have done it. But I opened the vent. It slid out easily. No screws. Just metal warped from age. Behind it. Not ducts, not really. A hole, a shaft leading downward. Dark, deep. The air that rushed out wasn't cold anymore. It was hot, damp, like breath. and beneath it, a whisper, not a voice, just the idea of one. I slammed the vent shut. I left the hospital that morning and called out sick for a week. When I came back, room 208 had been sealed. No explanation. Just a wall where the door used to be, painted over like it had never been there. Rachel transferred to a different hospital. I stayed. I don't know why. Maybe to see if it ever came back. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I walk past the old hallway and I hear things. Scraping, breathing. And sometimes, I find a note on the staff bulletin board. Just a scrap of paper. One word, written in messy block letters. Watching. We all lie to new nurses, not maliciously, just to protect them. We laugh about the haunted 4th floor, tell them not to take it seriously, and call it an initiation joke. But every nurse who's worked nights here long enough knows the truth. There's something wrong with the ICU overflow ward. Something that watches, something that waits. I didn't believe in any of it until my 5th year on nights. My name's Kara. I've been a trauma nurse for nearly 12 years, but the one night I worked overflow ICU still makes my hands shake when I talk about it. I never went back after that. I refused. The 4th floor had been under renovation for months, but due to a flu outbreak and overcapacity, we had to reopen a wing early. I got floated to cover a double shift 12 hours, from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. in a wing none of us had set foot in for nearly 2 years. The second I stepped off the elevator, I felt it. You know how a place has a feeling, like a tone. The 4th floor didn't feel like a hospital. It felt like an abandoned motel. Cold linoleum, flickering lights, and that smelled drywall dust mixed with something else. Something sharp, like rust. There were only 2 patients. One of them, Mr. Howard, was sedated and intubated. The other was a middle-aged woman named Trina Morales, post-op stable, but disoriented. She kept mumbling about needing to leave before they walk again. I assumed she was hallucinating from meds. I was wrong. Around 11:45 p.m., I heard knocking. Not the someone at the door kind. This was slower, hollow, like someone tapping a knuckle against a wall. I followed it. Nothing. The hallway lights were dimmer than usual, humming and blinking like they were tired. I peeked into Trina's room. She was sitting upright, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling vent. I stepped in. "You okay, Ms. Morales?" She didn't look at me. She just whispered, "They're crawling again." I glanced at her Vido stable. Her pupils were huge. She grabbed my wrist and said something I still don't understand fully. "They made this place over their bones. That's why it won't sleep." Then she screamed, not loud, sharp, like something had touched her. I turned. The vent was dripping, not water, blood, just a few drops, pattering onto the tiles like a slow, leaky faucet. I grabbed gloves and a towel, opened the vent. Empty. No pipes, no wires, just black space and heat, like something alive was breathing through it. I shut the vent, backed away, and pressed the emergency call for maintenance. I didn't wait. I left the room and went to check on Mr. Howard. His monitor was flatlining. I bolted in, but he wasn't coding. His heart rate was fine. The monitor itself had been turned off. Power switch flipped manually. No one else was in the room. He was sedated, restrained. There was a bloody handprint smeared across his gown. I stood frozen. Then the lights flickered and went completely out. The entire wing plunged into darkness. Backup emergency lights kicked on 5 seconds later, casting everything in a sickly red glow. That's when I saw them down the hallway. A figure, not a staff member. Bare feet, pale skin, wearing what looked like an old tattered hospital gown. Long hair, no face. It stood at the end of the hall, arms twitching slightly, like a broken puppet. I blinked and it was gone. I didn't imagine it. I know I didn't. I ran to the nurse's station, picked up the emergency phone. Dead, no tone. I tried the walkie, clipped to my SCR UBS. Static. My mind raced. I thought just get through the shift, stay alert, keep moving. Then the scratching started in the walls, like nails, dragging. I returned to Trina's room. She was gone, just gone. No alarm triggered. Her four-stand was knocked over, and the bed was empty, but the window was shut, doors locked. No signs of her. Then I noticed the footprints. Bare feet, bloody, leading out of her room, and toward the supply closet. I followed. Every instinct in me screamed not to open that door, but I did. The light inside was off. I used my phone's flashlight. That, crumpled in the corner, was Trina, mouth open in a silent scream, eyes rolled back, frozen in terror, still breathing, barely. She had scratch marks across her arms and legs, deep ones, as if she'd tried to claw something off her. I dragged her into the hallway, pressed the portable panic button, clipped to my ID. Still nothing. And then, I heard a lullaby, soft, childlike, coming from the intercom overhead. No lyrics. Just a slow, eerie melody that seemed to echo from somewhere below us. That the kind of song that would play from a child's music box left too long in a damp basement. I wheeled Trina back to her room and locked the door behind us. She was barely conscious. I gave her oxygen, took her vitals, did what I could, but she kept whispering the same thing. Don't let it see your name. Don't speak. Don't speak. It remembers names. I didn't understand until I saw the whiteboard. Every hospital room has one. The name of the nurse on duty. Mine was written in dry erase marker, clear as day, Kara, and underneath it, in smeared red knot marker, I see you now. Kara, I erased. My name, hands trembling. I scrubbed the whiteboard until my skin hurt, until there wasn't a trace left. And still I felt like something was whispering it. My name, as if it had seeped into the walls. Trina had gone silent, her breathing shallow. I needed to get her help, but my cums were dead. The stairwell was too far, and I wasn't about to risk the elevators, not after what I saw down that hallway. I grabbed a crash cart and loaded Trina onto the bed. The lights flickered again. Something moved in the vent above us. Not a rat. Too big. Metal creaked. The same lullaby played again, but slower this time, like it was melting. I pulled her into the hallway. The bloody footprints were gone, wiped clean. Like someone or something wanted me to doubt myself. But then, right ahead of us, a figure stood just outside room 427. Same pale skin, same torn gown, head tilted like it was trying to listen to something inside the wall. It didn't look at me, but it knew I was there. I felt it in my chest. The way you feel a scream before it comes out. I turned us around. Behind me, the figure appeared again. Closer now. Still not walking, just showing up. My breath caught. I shoved Trina faster, but the wheels snagged on a crack in the linoleum, and the bed slammed into the wall. The noise echoed like a gunshot, and the lights died again. Red emergency lights flicked back on, but dimmer. The figure was gone. A door creaked open down the hall. Not a hospital door. It sounded wooden, like something ancient and heavy. Not part of the building. I backed up, dragging the bed with me. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Then Trina stirred, eyes open. She reached up, grabbed my collar and said, "You have to shut the door. You have to lock it in." "What door?" I whispered, but she was gone again. Just then, a cold breeze rushed past. I turned around. Room 421. The door was wide open, and from inside, there was darkness so thick my flashlight couldn't cut through it. I stepped forward and felt the air change. It was like walking into a meat freezer. Then I heard something dragging itself across the floor inside. I stepped back, slammed the door shut. It didn't close. The door resisted, as if something was holding it open from the other side. I put my whole weight into it, pressing my shoulder to the wood. And then a hand slammed into the door from the other side. Gray. Inhuman, bent, wrong. The fingers scraped at the edge of the door like it was trying to pull me through the gap. I screamed and shoved harder. Something whispered from behind me. Not Trina, not anyone human. A breathy voice, so close it felt like it was in my ear. "You're already inside." I finally forced the door shut, locked it with shaking hands. The hallway was empty again. I had no idea how long I'd been on that floor. It felt like time was folding in on itself. Minutes stretched, seconds collapsed. My watch was frozen at 3:33 a.m. I kept moving, down another corridor I didn't recognize, one that shouldn't have been there. The hospital was old, sure, but I knew its layout. This hallway had no windows, no signs, just peeling paint and patient room doors that had been boarded shut from the inside. One of them had a handprint, red and fresh. Trina started convulsing. I dropped to her side, started checking her vitals. Her pulse was racing. Her lips moved, no sound. I leaned in. Her voice was faint. "You have to say its name backward. That's the only way." "What name?" I asked. She started choking. And the walls began to pulse. Literally like veins were running through the plaster, beating in rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. My flashlight dimmed. Then I heard footsteps from every direction, slow shuffling, multiple sets, some light, some heavy, all barefoot. I backed against the wall, dragging the bed toward the stairwell exit, but it wasn't there. It should have been there instead. A nurse's station, old, covered in dust, like it hadn't been used in decades, and sitting behind it was me. Same scrubs, same ID badge. But the thing in my skin was smiling. Its eyes were pitch black, like someone had scooped them out. It raised a finger to its lips. Then it stood, and as it walked toward me, its skin began to peel. First, the face, then the arms. Beneath it was nothing. Just crawling black tendrils, like roots from a dead tree. Trina screamed. And suddenly, the real emergency alarm blared. The red lights flashed brighter. The overhead intercom screeched back to life with static. And then a voice came through my charge nurse on the main floor. Kara, where are you? Kara, respond. I grabbed the radio. It worked now. I screamed for help. I gave my location, though I wasn't sure anymore. If I even was in the hospital. The figure stopped. It cocked its head, confused, like the outside world was bleeding in and it didn't like it. And then it did something I'll never forget. It whispered my full name. First, middle, last. Like it had read it off my soul. I turned and ran. I pushed Trina's bed as fast as I could down the hallway. Doors slammed shut on either side. Lights burst overhead. The ceiling cracked open and black. Vine-like arms reached down toward us. But we made it to the real hallway. And there, thank God, were 2 security guards and my charge nurse. They pulled us out. Trina survived. Barely. I was sent to Psych 4. Observation. No one believed me. They said it was stress, sleep deprivation, hallucinations. But then the footage from the hallway came back. And there, for one frame, just one, was the figure. Standing outside room 421, looking at the camera. Smiling. We don't use the 4th floor anymore. No one does. They say it's under long-term construction. But I know the truth. Something was locked in there, and one night, we let it out. They told me never to open the door at the end of the pediatric ICU hallway. That was the first thing the head nurse said during orientation. Not even a joke. Not a wink. If you see it open, shut it. If you hear something behind it, ignore it. If you dream of it, don't speak about it when you wake up. That was my first night on the 4th floor. I thought she was just trying to scare the newbie, but no one laughed. I work nights. Always have. Fewer patients, less chaos, more silence. But silence in a hospital isn't peaceful. It's heavy. It listens. That door, the one everyone avoids, was painted a dull gray, like someone wanted it to disappear. No sign, no room number. Just a faint dent in the middle, like something or someone had tried to push their way out. And every night I passed it, I felt it. Not fear. Something worse, curiosity. On my 4th shift, I was alone in the ward. Another nurse called out, short-staffed. Again, the security guard didn't make his rounds that night, and all the kids were asleep by midnight, tucked in and hooked up to their monitors. I was at the station reviewing charts when I heard the laugh. It was light, giggly. A child's laugh. It came from the far end of the hallway, right near the gray door. I checked the monitors. None of the kids were out of bed. None of the doors were open, but I still heard it again. Clearer. A laugh, followed by whispering. I stood up and slowly walked down the hallway. The lights flickered slightly, just enough to notice, but not enough to blame a power surge. As I got closer to the gray door, the air changed. Cold, still. And then I saw it. The door was opened just an inch. Inside, it was pitch black. No emergency light, no window, no sound. Just that oppressive darkness, like it had weight. I reached for the door, but I didn't touch it. Something in me screamed not to. I stepped back and called maintenance to check if it had been opened earlier. Told me what I already knew. There's no room behind that door. That's what he said. I checked the floor plans myself. He was right. That space didn't exist. At least, not on any current blueprints. But the door was real. I saw it every night. And after that night, the kids started talking. One by one, they'd whisper about a boy who's playing with you. I asked little Mia during Vitos. She smiled. He's in the wall. Another child said he heard tapping behind his bed. Another kept waking up screaming, saying the boy keeps opening my door, but he doesn't come in, he just watches. After a week of this, I brought it up to Dr. Levin, the overnight pediatrician. He paused, more serious than usual, and told me something that stuck in my brain like a splinter. Sometimes things attach to places that are supposed to heal people. That was all he said. A few nights later, I was checking vitals again when I noticed the hallway lights dim suddenly more than usual. Not flickering this time, just a full shift, like a veil was pulled down. I walked toward the nurse's station, and that's when I heard the dragging feet, slow, deliberate, coming from behind me. I turned quickly. Nothing but the hallway felt stretched longer than it was. The end seemed further away. The gray door looked different. Opened this time halfway. A hand reached out, small, child-sized, but gray-blue, like it had been drained. It curled its fingers around the frame but didn't step out. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. Then all at once, one of the patient monitors blared the flatline tone, sharp and sudden. I spun around and ran to the room. Bed 3, Daniel, 6 years old, post-op for a tumor removal. I got there in seconds, crash cart behind me, ready to code. But Daniel was fine, sleeping peacefully. Vitals, stable, his monitor, working again, it was never disconnected. No error, no issue. The sound I heard didn't come from his room, it came from the station monitor. It had flashed a warning for bed 3, but when I replayed it, there was no alert, nothing logged. Impossible. That night, I heard the boy speak for the first time. As I passed the grey door, which now seemed to breathe faintly in and out, like lungs behind drywall, I heard his voice, a whisper. My room is cold. I stopped, my bed is too small. And then why did they leave me here? I ran, I didn't clock out. I didn't even grab my bag. I just left, sat in my car and cried until the sun rose. I swore I wouldn't go back, but I did. I had to. The other night nurse was out for weeks with pneumonia. It was just me again, and the door was still there. That night, the whispering came earlier. More kids were restless. One started having seizures, no medical explanation. Another spiked a fever that wouldn't break. The monitors glitched every hour, even though Biomed cleared all the machines. And at 3:08 a.m., every light in the hallway went out at once. My flashlight didn't work, backup power didn't kick in, everything stopped. Then I heard footsteps, running, this time childlike, down the hallway, toward me. I pressed against the wall, holding my breath. Something brushed past my leg, but nothing was there. And then I looked at the grey door, open all the way inside. I could see a bed, a small one. The frame was rusted, mattress stained. Straps dangled from the corners, and above it, scribbled on the wall in what looked like dried blood, was a single name. Beignet blinked, and the door slammed shut. So hard the frame cracked. The lights returned. All the kids were screaming in their rooms, and the word Benny was scratched into the nurse's station window. The morning after, they sent a priest, not for the building, for me. They thought I was having some kind of breakdown. PTSD, stress, hallucinations, whatever label they needed to make sense of it. But I wasn't the only one seeing Benny's name. By noon, the scratches had appeared on every glass surface, in the ward, on windows, on the med cabinets, even faintly on the screens of the vital monitors. Same shaky scrawl, same name. Benny. The head nurse finally confessed what I wish I'd never learned. Ward 4 wasn't always pediatrics. Back in the 80s, it was part of a juvenile psychiatric wing. Most of the records were destroyed when they renovated, but one incident remained buried in the paper archives. A patient, only listed as BL, restrained after a violent outburst, 6 years old, abandoned by his parents, unclaimed, died during an unauthorized isolation procedure. No date of death. No file on cause. No autopsy. Just gone. And guess which room he was kept in? The one with no number. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed in the on-call room with the lights on, drinking stale coffee and trying to convince myself none of this was real. But around 2:45 a.m., I woke up. The lights were out, the coffee cup was on the floor, and standing in the doorway was Benny. Just a silhouette, barely visible, but I knew, I felt it. He stepped inside slow, like his joints didn't work right, like he hadn't moved in decades. I couldn't scream, I couldn't move. He came close, and I saw his face. Grey stretched skin, hollow eyes like black wells. But the worst part was his mouth stitched shut, not with thread, but with tiny medical staples. He raised his hand and touched my shoulder. In that moment, I saw everything. Not a vision, not a memory, but his pain. I saw him in that tiny bed, crying into silence, begging for someone, anyone to help. I felt the panic when the door was locked, the confusion when no one came back, the cold that crept in as the days passed and no food arrived. The silence that drove him mad. He didn't want to hurt anyone, he just wanted someone to open the door, and we never did. I blacked out. When I woke, I was in the supply closet, the grey door wide open, but the hallway cameras showed nothing, not a glitch, not a shadow, just me, walking into the darkness, and then walking out 3 hours later, eyes wide, not blinking. One saw me move during that time. I put in a transfer request the next day. Got reassigned to another unit. Geriatrics. It's quieter, safer, but even here things aren't right. Last week I found a child's drawing slipped under the door to my locker. Crayon, shaky handwriting. It was a picture of the pediatric ICU hallway, with a dark figure at the end, and in the bottom corner, my room is too cold. I burned the paper. It didn't help. 2 nights ago, I heard laughing again, but not in this building. I looked out the window from the 3rd floor, and saw the pediatric wing. One window had the blinds open, and behind the glass, Benny was standing. just watching, still stitched, still waiting. I don't think he'll ever stop, you see. When a child dies forgotten, when suffering goes unanswered, long enough it becomes something else. It doesn't move on, it fests, it fails, it grows, and sometimes it learns to open doors. The fourth floor has been sealed since last month. Official reason, electrical fault, but no one will work nights there anymore. The door has no number, and I never speak his name, but sometimes when I close my eyes too long, I hear the whisper, my bed is too small, and then the door creaks. Just a little, like he's checking. Waiting. Because someone always forgets to close it. You ever work somewhere so long, it starts to feel like it owns a piece of you? I've been a nurse at St. Elora Medical for almost 20 years now. The building's old, too old, you can feel it in your bones. Some nights it groans louder than the patients, like it's stretching in its age, remembering things it doesn't want to forget. I stopped working the overnight shift last year, not because of the hours, not because of burnout, but because something happened that still makes me keep my lights on when I sleep. Something I haven't told anyone until now. We used to have an overflow room, down in the oldest wing of the hospital, long hallway, terracotta tiles that always seemed wet, even when they weren't. They'd shut that part down after the renovation, but during the flu surge last winter, they reopened it for emergency capacity. They assigned me to a room that didn't exist on the current blueprints, room 139. It had been sealed for decades. No working Wi-Fi, no call button, just a bed, an old wall clock, and this hum in the air that you could feel in your teeth. The patient was already in there when I arrived. No name, just Jane Doe, pale, motionless, no chart, no known allergies, no wristband. I asked the admitting doc where she came from. He just said, transferred from upstairs. Thing is, there isn't an upstairs anymore. The psychiatric ward used to be above the old wing, but it was demolished years ago after a fire, burned half the records, collapsed the floor. They never even rebuilt it. I should have walked away then, but I didn't. The room was freezing cold, colder than anywhere else in the hospital. We checked the HVAC, nothing wrong. The thermostat read 72 degrees Fahrenheit, but the air had that bite, like walking into a freezer. I took her vitals. Everything was normal. Except she wasn't breathing. I held my breath, leaned in closer. Still, chest was still, pulse was steady, though strong even. I checked again with a second nurse, same result, no breath, pulse fine, pupils dilated, no reaction to light. We called the attending. He examined her for 20 minutes and came out visibly shaken. She's stable, he said, just keep monitoring her. That night, I sat in the nurse's station across from 139, watching the door through the security feed. It stayed shut, but the clock above her bed kept jumping. First 2:06 a.m., then to 14 a.m., then 1:59. A.M. It wasn't ticking, it was skipping. At 3:17 a.m., the feed glitched. When it returned, the door was open, and she was standing, not walking, not twitching. Just standing dead still, facing the wall. I ran down the hallway, slammed the door open. She was back in bed, same position, same vacant eyes, like she never moved. But the chair, in the corner, the one I'd left pulled in, was across the room, lying on its side. We started getting other complaints. A tech saw her walking past the break room, eyes fixed forward, bare feet silent on the tile. A janitor quit after claiming he saw her reflection in a mirror, even though she wasn't in the room. And the patients, they started talking in their sleep, whispering the same phrase. She's coming down the stairs. I told my supervisor. She laughed, said I needed sleep. Maybe I did, so I took the next night off, slept with white noise, didn't even dream. But when I came back, they told me Jane Doe had coded vitals crashed at exactly 3:17 a.m. No warning. They tried resuscitation, but it was like her body just shut down, like something flipped a switch. Forget this, when they zipped her into the body bag, the temp in the room dropped to 43 degrees Fahrenheit. No AC, no open windows, nothing. They moved the body to the basement morgue by the end of that shift. We had 2 more patients in the old wing go catatonic. Both in adjacent rooms too. 139. One died the next morning. The other just stared at the ceiling for 6 days, whispering numbers. When I finally got close enough to hear them, they weren't random. It was the time 3:17 a.m. over and over again. I avoided the old wing after that. Took shifts on the 5th floor. Stayed busy. Stayed surrounded. But something had changed in the hospital. Mirrors started fogging with handprints, even in dry rooms. Static over the intercom just before shift change. The smell of antiseptic mixed with something rotting, drifting up through the vents. But most of all, I kept dreaming of stairs. Spiraling, cracked concrete stairs descending. Forever, and a figure at the top, thin, pale eyes black and mouth sewn shut. Every time I looked up, she'd take one step closer. Until the last dream. When she reached the bottom, I woke up with bloody fingernails, like I'd been clawing at something in my sleep. I checked the feed from the night of Jane Doe's death. Security footage from the morgue. At 3:17 a.m., the body bag unzipped itself. There's no better way to say it. The zipper peeled back. Her hand came out first, slow, shaking. Fingers bent like she was feeling her way through the dark. Then the rest of her sat up. She looked at the camera, right into it, like she knew I'd be watching. The lights blew out. Footage cut to static. Jane Doe was never logged as cremated. Never logged as transferred. She just vanished. And the next day, room 139 was sealed again. The number plate removed, wiped from the system. But sometimes, when I walk past that old wing to get to the supply closet, I still feel the cold under my feet, still hear the faint hum in the air. And once, I swear on everything, I saw her face in the window. Not on the inside, from the outside looking in. I stopped telling people what I saw. What was the point? The more I tried, the more they looked at me like I was unraveling. Just another nurse cracking from stress. I get it. But I know what I saw, I know what I felt. And I know Jane Doe didn't die that night, at least, not in any way we understand. A few months passed. Things settled on the surface. The old wing was boarded up again, and the administration pretended like it had never reopened. But the little things didn't stop. Patients in unrelated wings began muttering in their sleep, whispering numbers that didn't make sense. Clocks skipping minutes. Nurses forgetting entire blocks of time, as if someone had wiped their memories clean for 10 minutes at a time. I overheard one nurse crying in the locker room. Said she walked into the supply room and saw her own reflection blinking when she hadn't. Another swore she answered a call light in room 139 even though that room no longer existed. One night, I was assigned a new patient. No chart, no insurance info, just a transfer note. The name on the form, E. Avery. That stopped me cold. The last time I heard that name was during my internship. Mr. Avery had died unexpectedly, years ago, in the psych unit upstairs. I still remembered his face, drained like something had hollowed him out. The note said he was being housed temporarily in the overflow. I tried to flag it, asked the attending. He brushed me off, said the records must have been recycled, reused, common name, he said. Could be a coincidence, it wasn't. When I went down to check on the patient, my badge wouldn't scan. The hallway lights were flickering. I walked in manually. The moment I stepped inside, the hum returned, that same low vibration in the air, the same cold pricking my skin. And when I got to the end of the corridor, room 139 was open. I swear on my life it was there, not boarded up, not locked. Open. The light inside was dim, flickering, like a dying bulb, and someone was sitting on the bed. Not Jane Doe, but a man in a hospital gown, back turned, shoulders stiff. Mr. Avery, I asked. No answer. I took one step in, and the door slammed shut behind me. The lights cut out, darkness swallowed the room whole, and I couldn't even see my hand in front of me. The hum became a buzz, like static crawling into my ears, and then, I heard it. Breathing, but not just from in front of me, from all around me. Light flashed for a split second, emergency power flickering on. In that instant, I saw them figures, thin, pale, eyes wide and unblinking, lining the walls of the room. They didn't move, didn't blink, but they were there, and right in the center, standing at the foot of the bed, Jane Doe. Her mouth hung open in a scream I couldn't hear. I reached for the door, but it was gone. Not locked, gone. Just a wall where the door used to be. I backed up until my shoulders hit something. A breath brushed against my neck, then a whisper, "She's still here." I don't remember leaving that room. I don't remember screaming, or running, or who found me. All I know is, I woke up in the break room surrounded by security, my hands shaking, my uniform soaked in sweat. They said I had a breakdown, gave me mandatory leave. But the kicker, there was no room 139 listed on the system, no patient named E. Avery admitted that night, and the hallway, still boarded up when they went to check. I know what you're thinking, sounds like a stress hallucination. Maybe some old trauma resurfacing. I told myself that too, for weeks. Until I got a letter. No sender, no return address, or just a single sheet of paper. "We need to talk. She's moving again. Meet me where the mirrors don't reflect." Midnight 139, that was last week. I still haven't gone, but every night since, I've seen her again, in dreams, in the edge of my mirror, in the reflection of my microwave door when I close it at 3 a.m. and the stairs. Always the stairs. Each dream, she's closer, and I've started whispering in my sleep, too. My roommate recorded it, same phrase, over and over, she's coming down the stairs. I know now that Jane Doe wasn't just a patient, she wasn't just some anomaly, she was a door, or maybe a vessel. And the moment she died, if she ever really died, something got loose. Something that doesn't obey rules, that doesn't care about medicine or logic or time. She's still here, hiding in static, reflected in glass, feeding on attention, on fear, on belief. And now you know about her too. You're part of it. You heard her name, you pictured her face. She's closer now, and she doesn't like to be forgotten. So when your clocks skip a few minutes, or your mirror fogs even though your bathroom isn't hot, or your hallway gets cold for no reason at all, look behind you. But don't turn the lights off. And whatever you do, don't go near any stairs at 3:17 a.m.